Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Alex Zagayevsky. I am a Senior Solutions Architect for Winslow Technology Group, and with me is John Nippers, Channel Sales Engineer for CyberArk. Today, we will talk about a few interesting topics. First, we'll talk about cybersecurity in general and how the majority of attacks today are not only targeting the users themselves, but the very computers that they use. Then John will talk about how CyberArk can protect those endpoints and how their solution differs from traditional endpoint security measures. Now, before we jump into today's topic, I will start off with a brief overview of Winslow Technology Group, especially helpful if you're joining us for the first time, and then hand the mic over to John so he can dive into the features and functionality of the CyberArk's Endpoint Privilege Manager. A couple of housekeeping items. First, please do send us your questions via the Q&A feature of this webinar so we can answer them at the end, time allowing, of course. And second, every attendee who attends the entire live webinar will be eligible to receive a Turret Cooler backpack. So a few words about Winslow Technology Group. We were founded by Scott Winslow almost 20 years ago. We've been in business as a technology solutions provider headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts. We have a distributed workforce with satellite offices in Charlotte, North Carolina, New York City, and Washington, D.C. We specialize in hardware, software, and services not only for the core data center, but also end-user compute complemented by our cybersecurity, disaster recovery, and cloud solutions. We strive to identify and develop expertise in game-changing technologies, our partnership with industry leaders like CyberArk being a great example of that, all so that we can bring you the best possible outcome together. And in that vein, going it alone in the realm of cybersecurity rarely results in a good outcome. Using the NIST framework seen here as a guide and to demonstrate how the various technologies and services we offer, including those provided by our friends at CyberArk, line up with the 5 pillars of that framework. Anyone who has ever assessed their own cybersecurity needs knows full well how daunting a task meeting them on their own will be, especially when IT teams and budgets are already stretched. In response, we offer our customers an organized and comprehensive cybersecurity program that we strive to also be cost-effective. And speaking of collaborating, similar to how our cybersecurity portfolio does, WTG is further supporting our customers with our North Star MS program. This is our co-managed technology service that provides an affordable support and management solution. Our services will augment your team to reduce risk, increase efficiency, and provide a peace of mind for both the business executives and teams alike. And with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you for that. Share my screen. Thank you, everyone. Yes, my name is John Nippers. I am a channel SE I cover the US and Canada at CyberArk. Today, we're going to be talking about the foundational endpoint security and the race against ransomware. In this session, what we're going to cover is, yes, it's focused on ransomware. There's many different aspects of protecting the endpoint and the challenges that we faced. But this one, figured narrow it down. But with this information can give insight into many other scenarios. So let's go ahead and get started. So today, the idea that we're talking about, it kind of gets dismissed a lot as common sense, but often does not get acted upon. I mean, we think that it's something easy, so we just don't do it. And the idea is that to be secure, we must unprivilege the attacker. If there's only one takeaway from the session today, I'd like it to be that the key foundational endpoint security and identity controls are critical for security, but are often missing. The aspects of foundational endpoint security are identity security, access management, least privilege, and application control. These alone can give you a very high level of protection against ransomware. So at CyberArk, we've tested this stack in our lab of over 3 million samples of ransomware. And according to our test, this stack was 100% effective against these samples. So there's a critical misconception around endpoint security. And that misconception is that if you put in place an agent that protects against different kinds of malware, be it viruses, worms, Trojans, fileless malware, ransomware, well, you're going to be pretty safe against data breaches. So in this picture, attackers are assumed to be low privileged. This is almost never the case, however, because if they are indeed low privileged at that moment, then their first step will be to gain more privileges by the time they are ready to cause an impact, meaning they will execute the encryptors or extract the data. At that point, they have already gained enough privilege. They've been laterally moving through the environment, and they've been setting the stage for their maximum impact. They've been elevating their privileges all the way through. So, for example, in the news, we've all seen it. The congressional hearings on the SolarWinds breach. The EDR vendor CEO was asked, why was there no alarm for 11 days? And he said, of course, I'm paraphrasing, well, basically, the attackers achieved admin rights and admin access to the machines. So they just offloaded our EDR agent. So there was really nothing we could do. So we at CyberArk think that this is the big miss about the endpoint security. Not that the tools are bad, they're just not designed to defend against a privileged attacker. And that's the gap that we want to close with our solution. So the question is, are you protecting from the inside out, outside in, or both? So what do? With EPM solutions, in this analogy, we're an analogy of a house, protecting the house. We want to close all the doors and windows. We want to then lock those windows and doors, providing house keys only to the people we trust, only to the family. And that's by using an EPM product. Next, we introduce ourselves to the neighbors, tell them who we are by using a next-gen antivirus. Then, as we've established who we are, we want to protect ourselves. So we either build a gate, fence, moat, whatever that may be, to protect those coming to the house. And then finally, we want to watch what's going on by setting up cameras outside and installing an alarm system, maybe even putting a sign out front. And that's by using, in this analogy, using an EDR to protect, to close that all up. So, of course, how do we address this dilemma? Well, it starts with identifying that a fundamental building block is missing on the endpoint. There's lots of products likely running on your endpoints today, solutions that include different parts of EPP suites like antivirus and encryption, firewalls, to perhaps some of the industry's latest attempts of stopping the bad guys in the form of an EDR or next-gen antivirus that leverages behavioral analytics. Sure, most are patching Windows, various key applications and frameworks like Adobe and Java, as well as the browsers such as Chrome and Firefox, utilizing SCCM or other configuration management products on the market. But as I mentioned, there's a fundamental building block that is missing. That's where CyberArk comes in. So with our Endpoint Privilege Manager, it's an enabler to allow the InfoSec and desktop ops teams to do what they know is right and have always wanted to do. They want to harden the endpoint without impacting the user. So what we're talking about is we're shooting for defense in depth, or simply comprehensive multi-layered protection. So once again, we don't believe that any single solution is able to solve all of the problems. We don't believe that there is that one magic wand or silver bullet that can knock this out. We believe that EDR and EPM are complementary. And they each do what they are designed to do best. EDR records everything that allows for automated response and investigation, while EPM really defends against the attacker abusing privileges and at the same time, the credentials. The thing is, our essential endpoint security tools also need protection. We're not here to talk about the benefits of EPM over EDR. We believe these tools, once again, are complementary and should go hand in hand. So you need the privilege on your side to achieve business goals, to not interrupt the business. And privilege, it's just a necessity. You cannot remove privilege from the day-to-day life. However, that privilege is it's a double-edged sword. Privilege impact on the area of attack is tremendous. So according to our internal test, more than half of the Windows vulnerabilities would not be exploitable from the get-go if attempted as a standard user. The impact of privilege on the organization security depends on how you choose to approach it. You can pretend that there's nothing you can do, or you may choose to actively manage privilege. You've got to acknowledge the prevalence of privilege and also the dependence on it, but also the attacker's dependence on privilege. Attackers want privilege. So our solution, our identity security solutions allow organizations to remove local admin rights and maintain least privilege. And maintaining is important because we often see organizations that were able to briefly achieve the least privilege, but then gradually return because of privilege sprawl or creep or easing the day-to-day life of that IT administrator. Maybe, the team has shrunk down, so it's, well, here, I'll just give this group access rights. And we see that grow. We see that as a trend. So we provide the right management tools and also policy audit capabilities. And with that, we ensure that least privilege remains the active state of the organization's IT. So there's also a cost component that we should consider when we talk about securing that privilege. As you know, one of the ways organizations take on risk is to obtain a cybersecurity or a cyber insurance policy that will allow them to kind of mitigate the impact of a data breach. However, last year, the premiums continued to rise month over month, quarter over quarter, and year over year. And as you can see on the slide, the premiums went up significantly. That is, however, only if you can satisfy the growing list of requirements to obtain the policy, the insurance policy. If you can't, then you are looking at a non-renewal or at best, just an astronomical premium hike. So another thought is being compliant isn't always straightforward either. So for example, the requirement of MFA on shared accounts. How would you go about doing this? And who would you MFA? It's a shared account to begin with. You need specialized tools to enable the checkout of that account, of that shared privileged account from the pool, from the vault, then tying them to a specific person for the duration of the session and MFAing those admins. So one thing that we're doing is by doing this while really focusing on ransomware, you also inadvertently solve many problems. That's because every other type of attack, they're not that different from ransomware. As I mentioned before, this is just one example, but this can be taken out and used in many different use cases. So the difference is only in impact and sometimes in exfiltration stages of MITRE attack. The rest of the stages of your average attack are the same as the stages of the next. How the attacker gets into your infrastructure, how they move laterally, and how they compromise more credentials is pretty much the same. While this is focused on ransomware, you also want to keep in mind that if you are able to prevent the attack at the earliest stage, then the attacker never gets to the exfiltration and impact part of the attack. With foundational security controls, you are able to diffuse a lot if not most, of the TTPs that attackers use, and this way you essentially dry out their arsenal of tricks. So kind of cut them off. While complementing traditional endpoint security tools, you also defend them from privileged attack. You allow for early detection in the context of identity, access, and privilege. And that's a different kind of detection compared to what EDR provides. So finally, we'd like to explore Endpoint Privilege Manager, CyberArk's Endpoint Privilege Manager, or EPM, you'll hear it called. Remember that, so EPM works with already authenticated users. So essentially, this is the last line of privilege defense. Now that the user is authenticated, we still want to flexibly define what they can do or what they can't do. So this will, of course, be different from organization, roles, different things like that. But we can define what's safe, and we can control impact from malicious actions through the combination of least privilege, application control, just-in-time elevation, credential defense, ransomware protection, policies built into protection from ransomware and privilege deception, I guess, continuing that point. So the ransomware protection policy, what it is, it's built into EPM. It focuses on a different angle of protection from ransomware, while EPP and EDR focus on behavioral aspects of ransomware. Our solution monitors access to sensitive data by applications and can stop pretty much any type of data corruption. It doesn't matter how the attacker was able to get to that point. They're not able to execute the final stage of the attack, that impact stage. So what I have on the screen is an example, and this is just one of many when it comes to the privilege of the endpoint. So this is the UAC control on a Windows machine for a non-privileged user installing Google Chrome. So as this is the first box after downloading the Google Chrome install, this is the first box. UAC asking for credentials. However, that user receives this box. What do? If they don't have credentials, it's no, I don't have them. Well, one of the things that Google has done is found a way to circumvent and give this box. Google Chrome can be installed without administrative privileges. So the point here is to say that through Endpoint Privilege Manager, we can control down to the installer, and of course, we can also restrict from downloading applications. But as we see developers writing ways to circumvent or to allow their particular product to be used. And this can extend to, be it games or whatever, or anything that's not even a trusted installer that could bring malware or ransomware into the environment. So finally, I'll wrap up with what we offer. We'd be happy to schedule a demo of the EPM product to go into more depth, the technical demo of the environment, but you can also start with the EPM free trial, which is available on our website. As you can see it's on the screen from that website. The solution, it's a fully SaaS solution so that you are able to sign up and get going in no time. So we have a lot of resources available to assist you in this journey as well. But know this, if you sign up for the free trial and you need help with anything, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to assist. I want to thank you for this session, and then I guess I will turn it back over and we can address any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Let me just fire up. There we are. Okay, So thank you for that. It was a great overview of the CyberArk Endpoint Privilege Manager platform and what it can do to protect our endpoint systems. Personally speaking, I really enjoyed the analogy of your household. You know, we can all relate. It definitely drives it home. Also, I was reminded of the Windows Vista commercials when they came out from, shall we say, a competing operating system. We won't name any names. With the privilege questions coming up during installs, and ironically, they're now doing the same thing because at the end of the day, that's what you have to do. So I'm sure everyone else will agree that John just gave us a lot to digest, especially about how the measures against cyber criminals continue to evolve to better deal with the increasingly more sophisticated cyber attacks. Now, if you're unsure where to start or how to continue your own cybersecurity journey, I'd like to suggest starting with Winslow's complimentary NIST security assessment. This is about an hour-long consultative interview, which will help you identify areas for improvement, as well as give you an opportunity to get answers to some of your top-of-mind questions. So don't wait and contact your Winslow account executive today. So we did actually get a couple of questions here, John, and time is allowing, so if we may, let's address them. First one was, in most cases, servers and workstations are on different VLANs, but the workstations need to talk to servers, rarely to other workstations. Can your product block workstations from seeing each other?
So by using Endpoint Privilege Manager, if we're talking about a privileged access, with it being workstation to workstation or user account accessing the next, be it if everyone has access, then you would be able to control that privilege and lock it down to a specific endpoint. However, our product is not designed to control the network connectivity or just the accessibility. That's not what we're doing. So what we're doing is we're taking the privilege that the user has, logging, monitoring, and then being able to control what they can do, what they can see. So like I said, if the particular user has access to all workstations in the environment, then you could put that level of control. You could wrap around the privilege control for that user to not be able to use like the Windows machine or any share on a specific workstation.
I was going to say to build on your answer a little bit, it sounds like this could be especially useful for IT admins who might at that moment be logged in with their privileged account, therefore allowing for greater lateral movement on a network within an enterprise. Of course, we're hoping that everybody's following good practices and they log into their workstations with a regular user permissioned account and use the elevated one only when needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. If a privileged user, if a user, say an admin, logs into the machine, well, that one with EPM we could control. I mean, regardless of what level that they have, we could actually control on the endpoint. So say someone with a domain admin account logs into any workstation in the environment with EPM and with that agent running on the machine, which is one thing I didn't mention is a very lightweight application that runs, the agent that runs, and it runs at kernel mode, so it's seeing everything coming in at that lowest level of the operating system, so that we can see how that particular, like be a domain admin, would and what they could do, and we could cut that admin account off. So we could, from that, regardless of their level, using EPM could cut them down to where they could not do anything on that workstation as well. So giving them, either controlling them to what, say from a security perspective, maybe they don't need all of that, or even giving them just the right access to do what they need to do at that moment, and also for a limited time.
Right, and of course running it in kernel mode makes it that much harder to disable and circumvent.
And that's correct.
Right, next question. Does this run as an appliance or purely in the cloud?
Purely in the cloud. So we have, it is a SaaS solution, and from that SaaS solution, it's from connecting into the environment, it can, as long as that workstation can communicate to your Endpoint Privilege Manager console, to your tenant that's created, or the tenant that's created for the environment, as long as it can communicate, it doesn't even need to be on the same domain or the same network. So and that allows that freedom to use. Maybe a company has multiple divisions, and they can have one Endpoint Privilege Manager console that has multiple sets. So from a managed service company, you could have every single one of the companies that you manage, you support, you can have a set for each one logging into the same console. But the requirement is only that connectivity and that small kernel agent that's installed from the web console.
Okay, very good. So we don't have any further questions. I'll go ahead and wrap up in that case. Thank you again for joining us today. We hope we have provided you with some valuable knowledge. I think it bears mentioning that this very platform, the Endpoint Privilege Manager, is just one of many offerings from CyberArk, but this brief webinar allows us time only to discuss just that one in its entirety, with others, perhaps topics for future conversations. So if you'd like additional information about CyberArk, Winslow's North Star MS, or any of our assessments, please drop us a note at webinars, that's plural, @winslowtg.com. Till next time, stay safe.